One day when I was a young Boy Scout, we were on this wilderness hike, and we're hiking something like 20 miles over the course of the day, camping out by some lake. And I was the youngest of this group, and maybe I was a freshman in high school, and there's a bunch of senior guys. And so kind of by halfway through the day, I'm kind of lagging behind. We come to this point where the trail crosses over a river, and there's a big tree that's fallen over the river, and the trail goes right over the tree. And I get right at the base of the tree, and all of a sudden all these thoughts start hitting me. Like, this doesn't look completely safe, and I kind of wish I wasn't here all by myself and everyone else has hiked on. And then I think, well, what if I fell into the water? Maybe I would get hurt. Maybe I would just have to hike all this way with wet boots and have a wet sleeping bag. I'm thinking about all these bad things that can happen, and I ended up kind of paralyzed. After thinking it through, I said, I've just got to focus. I walked across the tree, and I carried on and made it. But I think we can take this type of attitude toward a fasting practice. We can think of it as something like this, very intense, crossing a rapids over this slippery tree. When I think the reality is, it's more like going to like a kid's trampoline park and kind of walking in between the foam pits, where it's like, even if we fell off, we'd probably just fall into this soft, cushy place. It wouldn't be so bad. Today, I want to think about practicing fasting. What I mean by a fasting practice, anything that you practice, it's something that you do to get better over time. If you're participating in some sort of dietary program and everything is going super great, and you're like, I'm just doing this one specific thing, I don't really feel like I need it to get better, well, of course, that's fine. I never push or encourage anyone to do anything, and certainly not anything that they don't need. But if someone is saying, I wish that I could get more out of this, I wish that I could increase the intensity, but I don't know how, well, a fasting practice can help you advance that. Now, I want to say right at the outset, I'm a big fan of schedules and routines and discipline. Having a structure that we can stick to has significant value. So nobody misconstrue that I'm suggesting that that isn't wonderful. But one of the original reasons I started making my own fasting-based content to begin with is that people can become so focused on the schedule that the schedule itself becomes the most important thing. And I don't feel that way either. So we need to balance the benefits of structure also with the freedom and grace of being freed from all of that. In my view, fasting is openness. It should just be calm, comfortable, low stress space. And if we're not feeling that way, if we're starting to become stressed by being tethered to some sort of dogmatic sort of schedule, then that isn't positive either. So we want to embrace both of these things and try to get the best out of both of them, kind of following that middle path that gives us the best of both worlds. I started thinking about this a lot this week because I got this very thoughtful question from Mama D. Thank you, Mama D of 2, for sending in this comment. Tonight I was not very hungry for dinner, but I feared if I didn't eat, I would be hungry later, be outside of my 8-hour window, then I'd be eating before bed, which isn't ideal. Any suggestions on how to handle this? I love this question. So practical, so thoughtful. And so let's dive into this space. So like I was saying before, option one, of course you could just eat. Like maybe your intuition was, this isn't going to go well. Eat just a little bit of a healthy thing now, and keeping on a schedule that could be more in this zone, like we were saying, could be perfectly fine. So with this whole thing, there's not a lot of good or bad or right or wrong ways to do things. There's just processes that serve you and processes that don't. And so if your original thought was, I'm going to eat a little bit of healthy thing, keep myself in this window, then I'm not going to be eating later, is perfectly fine. You don't have to overthink it. But the reason I'm taking a little time to dive into it is because there's an alternative way to think about it. Yes, the schedule is good, but also the flexibility. And let's think about it. What's more important than the schedule, in my view, is don't eat if you're not hungry. To me, don't eat if you're not hungry is like the base layer. If someone's trying to lose weight, we want to make the process absolutely as easy as possible. Like I said in that other video, the lowest hanging fruit, the easiest way to lose weight is don't eat if you're not hungry, because then you're not struggling. And so if you're in a space, you're saying, I have this mindset going in, I'm going to eat at these times, but what if you get to that space and you're not actually hungry? Like, well, this might be an opportunity to practice a higher level of fasting. If you can do it in an easy and thoughtful way, open up a greater food-free space, you spend more time running off the storage and you're training your body to do it. Two analogies that I really like to use is comparing fasting to learning to play the violin or comparing it to weightlifting. Pretty much nobody learning to play the violin just sits down and does it and sounds great, right? This is something that you work at over time. Fasting can definitely be like that. At a low level, okay, anybody can sit down with a violin, put their fingers on it, and make some sound come out. So it's like everybody can do it, but maybe you're not very skilled to start with it. But the more that you work on it over time, you're thoughtful, work at it, then you improve. Fasting definitely like that. Same thing with weightlifting. Like someone wants to lift big, heavy weights. It's like, well, probably can't do it if you've never done it before. Got to start with the lighter weights and work on it. So what does it look like to try to lift the heavier weights when we're fasting? What does it look like to become more skilled? It looks like slowly training your body over time to handle a larger food-free space. So someone is having kind of a typical 16-8, 18-6 sort of fasting practice. You get to that dinner, you're not hungry, you could keep that space going. And here's where we get, into the question. You say, but what if I get hungry later? So let's run the scenarios. Let's say you don't eat your dinner at 6 o'clock and you carry on and actually you're fine, which you might very well be. You stay hydrated, you use fasting aids. If need be, you find a pleasant distraction and you get yourself to bed. Maybe you're completely fine and you just go to bed and wake up and you start the cycle over. That is opening up the best case scenario, which is you just knocked out more hours of food-free space. You knocked out eating a whole meal. You're just advancing kind of level 1 up to a level 2 fasting practice. That's something that if you are trying to really dial in on this process, you should be very open to. Because I would encourage someone, keep an open mind. Someone say, oh, I could never do it. But what if one day you could? What if you could get part of the way there? So, when I tried to learn how to fast, I tried to do things like that. And at first I couldn't do it. So I've absolutely experienced this exact thing. Try to fast through dinner and then get toward bed. And it's like, oh no, this is not happening. So I always tell people, have a plan B. There's like a healthy plan B. Let's run the scenario. Now you have to eat before bed. You say it's 10 o'clock. No way can I sleep. I'm too hungry. This didn't go as, in a perfect scenario. And you say, oh, do you feel bad? You say, I feel like I failed this. I would not say that, because you tried to do something that like very tiny percentage of people in our society ever even try to do. Most people would never consider it. Some people who consider it would be so intimidated they never try it. And so here you try to do something. The mindset is what is the most important. You had a mindset of saying, I'm listening to my body here. I see I'm feeling like, okay, I'm embracing this idea. Don't eat if I'm not hungry. Try to make things as easy as possible. And you know what? It's not about comparing yourself to someone else. It's not like, oh, someone else can do this. Where is your body at physiologically? How much of a food-free space can you handle? This is like kind of how heavy of a weight can I lift? Where are you at? First times I tried to fast through dinner personally, I took 3, 4, I don't even remember, 5 times before it started to get easier. And so I would never tell someone to make a habit of eating at 10 o'clock, right? And I totally agree with Mama D. You don't want to get in a habit of doing that. But as a transition mindset, it can be completely acceptable and very positive. And initially you say, okay, eating at 10 o'clock, not ideal, but also it's buffered by what you're doing, right? You also knocked out that whole dinner time. And so you extended from whenever it was you ate, maybe lunch, you created another, secondary food-free space where you were fasting in that space, which is great. And if you're eating at 10 o'clock, hopefully is maybe the same thing that you were eating at 6, maybe it's not even as much. And so you say maybe it's not ideal, but it's also not so bad, especially as a transition if you think about it, about training yourself. And I bet you if you are thoughtful about it, and over time you try it, maybe the third time, maybe the fourth time, maybe eventually you're able to do it one day where you say, I've never done this in my life. I never, had a lunch and then fasted all the way through a dinner and then just went to bed and woke up the next day. Like, that's a pretty intense thing to do, especially if you've never done it. And so I would look at it as a training program. And if you can make it through to that point, then you've really accomplished something profound. You're opening up a lot of fasting space. And as long as you feel good and you're staying hydrated, you probably see significant results from teaching yourself how to do that. I hope this perspective is helpful in helping you to be less anxious or less fearful about opening up some fasting space. Find the flexibility between the benefits of structure and the grace and freedom we can have with ourselves to deviate from that and open up that space in a gentle and thoughtful way. Think more like walking across the foam pits in some trampoline park than trying to cross some rapids on a slippery tree.